Welcome back to the Identity Human podcast with your host, Don, and we've got her back.
Ray Armand.
Hey, Ray. Yeah, the crowd cheers. So welcome back. Did you enjoy a hiatus?
My hiatus was, I was here, but that version was not recorded. And then it's been a mad couple of weeks, has it not?
It has. I mean,
So
do we want to go down that route, or we want to move through that?
We're moving through it. We're not going to dwell on it. We just got a lot of stuff happening at the moment.
Well, I think we're being mysterious. So, like, just a couple of the kids sick. Ray's been a bit sick. Traveling, like, going up to London for business meets and.
It's not mysterious, it's just, I think with summer holidays being over, I think the first couple of weeks are always busy ones in the UK. First couple of weeks of September, should I say.
Well, hold on. I want to interrupt you there, but are we going to go with a narrative of because holidays over, everything gets busy?
No, hold on. I don't think we're saying we're stressed busy. I think we're just saying there is a lot more to do in a week than we typically have. Like, I was up in London on Monday at a meeting, and I'm going up to Manchester on Thursday. Now, a typical week would not have me traveling to 2 different cities around the UK.
But that doesn't have to do anything with the timing of holidays.
No, it does. Because I feel like everyone's away on holiday and not in the office. And so those meetings and that conference wouldn't have happened in August. Now everyone's back and people want to have face-to-face meetings, do conferences, so there's just a lot more to do. And there's a lot more queries coming in the email inbox, which is great. It's exciting. It means there's more potential out there. But there's just a lot more to pick from, where I think everything kind of slows right down in August.
Yeah.
So okay. That was why, and just explaining why, when the recording didn't work out last week, on top of me being sick.
I did explain slightly.
On top of me being sick, that there just wasn't time. There just wasn't another hour slot for us to sit down and record it together.
And I sadly don't think we're going to be able to rehash the gold that we had in there. It was a very good episode.
They'll have to forever more wonder what was in that.
It's like the second missing episode that we've got, because I did one when we were in South Africa. It was like episode 27 or 28 that I've got recorded, but I haven't been able to like download, move across, and upload. And I'm probably not going to, because I can't remember what it spoke about. But I really like the fact that there's a secret episode out there in the ether waiting to be downloaded again. So, more importantly, what are we going to be talking about today that is going to enthrall the listeners? Like, what have they come back for? They've read the title, the description, which we haven't made yet because we still haven't spoken about it, but I know it's going to be something really crazy.
I don't know. I feel like I'm in as much of the dark here as our listeners, because Don has kind of said he's got this topic he wants to talk about, but he didn't want to tell me because he wanted to see my raw, truthful reaction as we go through this. So
it was less the topic and more the story that comes with the topic, wasn't it? So today I did what we call team dynamics delivery for a client, which is fascinating because it's essentially a month lead up to this, where I do one-to-one feedbacks on personalities, and I actually managed to include our DNA of a champion, which is like mental resilience and toughness. And that process was interesting because it was with a group of professionals. So when I say professionals, I mean could be accountants, lawyers, anything where you'd say their hard skills, their technical knowledge will be really good. So when I put professionals under that banner, but the mental toughness bit that came out, so where your first phase is personalities, you can have some really interesting conversations around that, because I don't try and make sure people aren't boxing themselves in or biasing themselves into I am this, you're this, therefore we don't get along. Okay. More to use it as insight into like, ooh, if I can spot that, how do I get the best out of someone? So how that relates into the team, etc. Then following that up with like mental resilience, mental toughness stuff, there's some very surprising reflections that came out of it that I was like, that's great to see, because it almost was able to get these hardcore individuals to just take a breath, because it was something that they hadn't seen, was reflecting things that they knew about themselves that they didn't realize would come out in the questions. And it was almost like a really cool moment where they were like, they just let down their guard, and I really loved it. But after that month or so, because there was like 12 of them to get through, we did the team feedback today. And that's awesome, because now we cut through months or years of not getting to know each other or thinking you know someone, and actually looking at the way that people think on the inside. And in that, and this is where I said I'll tell you a story, it's all around, for me, it's all around how you start off a team building, not team building, but how you start off making a stronger team, for the end result being a high performing team. At the top end of an organization, you have to make sure that you guys are communicating effectively, operating well, understanding the mix of personalities to be able to lead people better, so that you can create your everlasting culture that lasts long beyond your effect that you have there as an individual. So that for me is the first session. It's not the end point. My session is not the end point. My session is almost like, I don't care if you use me again or not. I'm interested to see where you go with this, because it's not necessarily the one session that has the big effect. It's how you use it after that. Now, to get you into this, is I told a story about super chickens. Have you ever heard of the super chicken story?
No.
So there was there's a more technical term for this, I know, and whether it's a social psychologist or there was a professor term around it, where they took a bunch of chickens. So they had your super layers. He said you can easily measure the super chickens.
I think I might have heard.
Yes, you have. Yeah. You have, and I'm reminding you. See, now you're smiling.
Yeah.
And the super chickens were the ones that laid loads of eggs. And then you had your average Joes that would just, they would lay and then they wouldn't. And they separated them into two bunches and studied them over 6 generations. So the end result was the super chickens killed each other off till there were like 3 left, and they plucked each other and they were skinny and bony and they weren't laying eggs. And then the average group were plump, thick, and laying eggs as they were 6 generations ago, with the super, as if they'd had a new hierarchy. And so the person, and there was a lady talking at TEDx Women's, I cannot remember her name. It's not that I'm arrogant about it, just names is not a big thing. So if I talk to you about books, I'm not worried about the author, it's the message.
Okay.
And they were talking about hierarchy and competitiveness in teams actually doesn't serve you in the long term, because the super chickens wanted to outperform each other. And because they wanted to outperform each other, they pecked at each other because they were constantly trying to one up each other.
Yeah.
Whereas the average Joes trusted each other, worked together, worked in terms of each other's strengths. And at times there would be one of them would be a super chicken, super layer. And then they'd be like, yeah, I'm tired now. So then the other one would step up, and they just had this harmony and balance. So I can see I need to bring you in now. What are your thoughts on this from your experience, from your side of things with the teams that you've got or what you've seen? Would you be able to relay that message, or would you go, actually, no, I disagree, because those are a bunch of chickens and we are people, and actually you need to be competitive to drive a certain standard?
Well, it's interesting, I think, because actually I'm trying to think where this idea of competitiveness was brought into my mind recently, and it was on a LinkedIn post, actually. I think someone posted about how much competitiveness is too much. I think it was Rob Graves that posted it. So it is actually something that I was thinking of just this week. So to answer your question, I think we can definitely learn a lesson from the chickens. Like be more the normal average Joe chicken, because clearly there is long-term benefits to that. And 100%. Like, it's all about the team and working together and not trying to one up one another. But it's interesting when you start to delve into this idea of competitiveness, because I think competitiveness is a key component to, I think, and I may be wrong, to being successful as an individual. So how do you balance it? Like I think when Rob Graves put the post out, he was more talking about like, is breeding or encouraging competitiveness between your kids and in a family good or bad?
And you talk about that. I was going to lead you into that next.
And so I was always brought up in a very competitive household,
Yes,
and
were.
I love I love the competitiveness. It's fun. And so I think it can be done in a fun way where it's like,
yes,
we got to compete, but ultimately we are still one whole team, and always coming back to that, I think, is important. But I also don't think it's healthy to be completely uncompetitive.
Yes. So again, it's about the balance. But do you find that there might be issues if you've constantly in an environment where you have to be the best and you have to always win, that it gets in the way of you actually working with the team? Because working with the team means you have to supersede your ego and allow someone else to beat you, as in perform their job really well, so that actually the team wins. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, that's why I suppose my answer would be competitiveness is important as long as it's being framed correctly to people who experience it. So that how would you frame it? I'm just trying to think. It can't be that the ultimate result needs to always be to win, which is funny because that's the definition of competitive. But it means that like your ultimate result, I think, needs to be to have fun in trying to win and actually appreciating the journey that you go on, and actually realizing that sometimes winning is failing and learning from that failure. So not focusing on each individual win, but knowing that ultimately your goal is to win, inverted commas, and that as long as you personally are growing on a journey, you should be happy with the progress you make in any one competition.
So do you think that certain personality types are prone to enjoy the competitiveness versus not?
The word enjoy that you put there is interesting.
Well, okay, enjoy is lean into. And
I mean, there's clearly,
I
think there's clearly personalities that are naturally more competitive, like nature versus nurture. So where I grew up in a household that really encouraged competitiveness, obviously among myself and my siblings, some of us were more naturally competitive than others. So, but then, say for example, that came from a completely, not completely, but a household where competitiveness wasn't encouraged.
No, it wasn't not encouraged. It just wasn't
a focus.
Yeah, it wasn't encouraged.
Yeah. So it wasn't discouraged. It wasn't discouraged. It just wasn't encouraged proactively. But you are quite competitive. But I almost think because it wasn't encouraged, you've got it more naturally.
Yeah. Interesting. I've never heard you say that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I don't think you would have been a professional sports person if you weren't competitive.
Well, it is.
And
so for me, you mentioned something earlier, and my mind went to types of motivation that can breed the competitiveness. So you can get an intrinsically motivated person to be competitive, and then you can get external motivators. So maybe let's use our kids, for example, like Miles versus Laurie. Miles I don't think he's got very much internal motivation to be competitive, but externally, you give him something to like win and he will beat anyone. Oh, you want to play PlayStation for an extra hour? He will go above and beyond. Miles, do you want to buy that Lego ship for £50? He will jump in an ice bath at -5 degrees, even though he hates it.
You don't get -5 degree ice baths because water doesn't freezes below zero.
What if you put salt in?
Oh, have you? I've never seen you test this thing.
I'm part of.
But I know, I do know that seawater can go below zero. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks. I haven't actually seen -5, but yes.
Okay, I don't think it goes to -5, but yeah, you diverge. So then versus Laurie.
Versus Laurie, who, unless she's internally motivated to, she's very unlikely to get that competitive kick, but she's very competitive inside. Does that make sense? So she'll happily lose to Miles or give up, unless there's something that she truly, deeply wants that she might not even tell you, but she wants to succeed. Does that make sense? So she's got this like longer term competitiveness angle, whereas Miles might be like the shorter term competitiveness.
Yeah, interesting. How can, based on everything we've discussed so far, like taking Miles and Laurie, but also other things we've discussed, how can someone use this to help themselves in their lives or their business? Or
probably how we compare ourselves to other people. The advice that you get given. I know, like I spoke to one of the rugby guys that had someone telling me he's not assertive enough, so he has to go and practice assertiveness. And I was like, yeah, good luck. Good luck trying to be something that you're not with that. I said, if you want to practice assertiveness, tie it into a bigger goal, because you can be, and I knew him, I said, you can be very assertive when you tie into it. Because his
when
thinking,
you tie into it?
When you buy into that like bigger direction.
Yes.
But on the shorter stuff, he was just not interested in being assertive. So it's just, for him, it was about framing where he needed to be assertive. So that competition is the same. How can we apply this to day-to-day? Is the advice you get given or who you compare yourself to can either make you feel too competitive or not competitive enough with your teams or those around you. And yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, I think that's a good point. I think I'm maybe someone who's always been framed as too competitive. And so we will identify where we fall on the scale of anything, competitiveness, looks, cleverness, or whatever, and we'll beat ourselves up for where we fall on that scale. People will always beat themselves up, but I think the key is awareness, becoming aware of where you fall on the scale and not labeling it as good or bad, but just being aware of where you are on the scale, where perhaps other people are, so that you can then adapt your reactions or the things you do in your life relative to that.
Yeah, and then I think that's where it leads nicely into being like part of a team, part of a family, part of a friendship group, is if you're aware of your competitiveness, you know when it's going to help the group versus when it's probably going to not help the group.
Yes.
And if you want to bring the resilience and mental toughness, and if someone's in a good frame of mind, they're resilient, you can be more competitive with that person, and that's going to get more out of them. Whereas if someone's going through a lot and you try and be competitive and you beat them or they give up, that's probably going to make them feel worse.
Yes.
So how do you read that? How do you address it in day to day to make sure that you're doing it in a way that's supporting those around you? Because I think at the end of the day, part of why this interests me is not how do we make a high-performing corporate team, it's how do we understand people.
Yes.
So identity human, again, I'm always
and understanding ourselves. Yes.
Understand yourself first. So there's a good point. When I was doing some of the feedbacks, a few of the comments from the people within the first 10 minutes, the clients, were, "Oh, I can see how this can help me with the team." And I was like, "Is that your first focus?" And they're like, "Yeah," because I kind of understand myself. And I was like, that's where we need to realize there are levels of self-awareness, and there's three categories. It's self-awareness, individual impact, and collective impact.
Okay.
So if you're constantly focusing on collective impact, what are you not focusing on?
Yourself.
Yeah. So it's almost framing it in a way that you can focus on others, but you're not going to be aware of how you're coming across. You're not going to be aware of what you're missing. But if you focus on yourself, automatically by understanding what you are and what you're not and how you come across, you understand other people because you're more aware of how they come across.
Yeah.
And that allows you to connect better. So that's the self-awareness bit, is being aware. Individual impact is what you can do for yourself. And then the collective is what you can do for others.
Yeah.
And so if we can frame it that way, it leads right back into...
So you think more strength comes from understanding yourself before jumping into understanding others?
Yeah. And so if we want to tie in, say, some leadership aspects here, it's that ability to be vulnerable, the ability to not be the smartest person in the room, and really lean into that. If you don't know yourself and you try and be the smartest person in the room, but you're so unaware that actually right next to you is someone that is very good at what they do, you're going to miss that. You're going to annoy them, and you're going to lose a very good person simply because you thought you had to do it yourself, but you were unaware that you couldn't. And it's when you're comfortable with who you are, you can admit mistakes. You're a lot more psychologically safe to be around, if that makes sense,
yes,
because you're aware that, kids is always a good example, is if you're aware of your shortcomings, you can then accept kids' shortcomings, which means you don't shout at them for not cleaning up as soon as you tell them to clean up.
Yeah.
Because you understand that they're on a journey, and they've got a longer time span. So we need to be aware of, I think we need to be aware of how we come across in a team, and creating or understanding what that psychological safety actually means. And it comes from the awareness within yourself to recognize your strengths. And when others make mistakes according to your strengths, you don't need to judge them according to your strengths. You need to put it into the right context, which is what.
So there is the need to, and I have the context of the team a bit, but you start with yourself.
Yeah, but that's why we say if you understand yourself, you can get the context easier. But if you don't start with yourself, then your context is always what you're comparing to. And that you could be comparing to something that you see and like, and that lacks a deeper understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, where do we go from here?
No, I was just thinking, I was looking, and I thought, I think we've done a good summary there. I think, for me, the big takeaway, it's just really, don't even want to say reaffirm something, understand. It's just put into a package and understanding that I think is important. And if we go back to this idea of competitiveness, and I feel like it's something, we all have those attributes, our personality attributes, let's say, if we focus on personality, that have been labeled good or bad. And for me, being competitive is something that always tends towards people label as slightly bad. because you can be quite emotional when you're competitive.
Yeah.
If you're honest. So it's about,
I'm interested as why you laughed there.
no, because obviously there's been times where I've got all like heated about.
Have you? I don't normally see you get heated.
You know, like about, I don't know. Have I got heated over table tennis? But I think of table tennis.
Oh, but I always think that you get heat or upset because I then mock you because I'm really good at it, as opposed to you getting heated because you're competitive. Does that make sense? I don't mock it that badly.
I think it comes from being competitive. But I think the core takeaway for me from this episode, and obviously, hopefully, like you get the similar listening to it, is that be more self-aware, and in that process, don't make sure that you don't label something as good or bad. So if you have an attribute about yourself and you think automatically when you think it, you go like you're all those signs of like, oh, just think really bad of yourself. Your shoulders drop, you feel your energy drop, your heart maybe races. You just go to this negative state when you think about that specific personality attribute that you have. Then that's actually something that you need to journal on and think about, because you shouldn't see any parts of your personality as good or bad. You should just on the scale of competitiveness, or this, what's another like personality trait, like on the scale of
emotion,
how emotional you are, or
stubbornness,
whatever it is, you should just be aware of where you are, perhaps relative to other people, but it shouldn't be good or bad, because it's got its strengths in different circumstances. So if you felt bad, go back, because I'm almost certain if you feel bad about a personality attribute that you have, you can probably think back to one or two events in your life, probably when you were younger, where a teacher or an adult or another kid said something to you that made you feel bad for having that personality attribute. So for me, it's making sure that you work through anything. If you've labeled yourself as good, but specifically focusing on the bad, a specific personality attribute, so that you can clear that away. And then really, like what you bring to the table, Don, and what you were talking about when we started this episode, is just and I forget the word you use, but like self-enlighten, like really understand yourself by being very aware of your own personality, because that's going to allow you to lead better, which is going to allow you to, if you have a team, lead them better. If you have kids, parent them better.
Spouse better.
Everything. So I think maybe it lends itself to an interesting topic that we could cover in Unshakable, like a coaching program, or we could cover another podcast episode, is how do they see themselves, and are there any areas where they're like, well, that's a bad part of myself, that's a not so good part of myself.
That's the second time it's come up in the last 2 minutes, is when you said you recognize elements of your personality that are not good. Okay, so I'm a deep diver into personalities and different, like it's a big part of what we deliver, and understanding people.
And you hate that some people label things as good or bad, or weak or strong.
Yes. So, and I use the analogy. So if you're not watching the video and you're listening to this, picture my left hand up in the air and by my shoulder, and my right hand up in the air and by my shoulder.
By your other shoulder.
By my other shoulder. Yeah. Thank you. So it's like I'm almost look like a bear that's about like on its back trying to attack. That's the image I want to have.
Yeah.
And now there's a pendulum that swings from that left hand, swings all the way down in like a semicircle to the right hand. So we go back and forth from the left to the right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we've got this pendulum going. Now right in the middle is a piece of string hanging from your nose. So it's dead straight down the middle. I often will talk about duality in personalities.
Okay.
And what that means is wherever there's a light, there's a dark. Wherever there's a positive, there's a negative. For every strength that your personality type or trait has, it has an equal and opposite, what we call awareness. What we as humans like to do is point out the awarenesses or notice them. As a survival instinct, we always notice things that aren't so good to see that they're not going to kill us, right? So we are very good at pointing out the things we don't like about other people or ourselves, that negative self-image that comes in. And what I like to, like highlight or show is that wherever you can notice that thing that you don't like, swing that pendulum and recognize the equal and opposite, and then bring it back to the midpoint. And I think for me, the secret sauce in life is understanding that you've got this constant ebb and flow of negative, positive in traits and how you present yourself. And the secret to self-awareness and how you present yourself is how quickly you can catch that flow from left to right, because you don't want to be overly energetic and positive if that's a trait, but you also don't want to be the opposite of that in terms of being able to encourage people in a negative way to go against the direction of the team because you're good at encouraging.
Yes.
So it's just that swinging left and right and just being aware to catch the swing so that it's just ticking right in the middle, and then it's just creating this really good momentum. And
like another good example I have is so someone who is strong and assertive can quite easily be seen, that can be seen as like a negative attribute because they can be seen as overpowering. So let's take a personality type that people don't often associate with being negative, and that's someone who is very giving and they just want to give and help. You get those people who just are just so self-sacrificing, they just want to help people and they just give, and that's seen, and not many people would be like, you're a bad person because you give. Okay, so it's seen as a positive, inverted commas, personality trait. But even that person who's maybe always been told, oh, you're so giving, so lovely, who for their swing on their negative side of the pendulum is that they lose out. Like, what would you describe? Like they end up being the ones who suffer because they can almost give too much.
Are we talking about the negatives for themselves or others? Because there's two. So the negatives for themselves is they lose out, they take on too much, they actually don't get appreciated like they should, and they'll keep
I'm
work.
referring to the expert here.
Okay, they'll keep getting work or tasks or things thrown their way. And then how others, they come across to others, interfering, over hands-on, stopping other people from being involved because they can just do it themselves.
Yes.
And I know the detail, I know how to do it, so let me just do it. Even though someone may have wanted to, but weren't as capable, that person that wants to give and help will overstep the mark constantly without realizing it.
So with your pendulum example, I think it's really important, like, to take a personality that people often would say, well, that's quite a positive thing, I should be more giving. But on the negative, even that personality has a negative side. So don't put yourself down if you have one of those attributes that people tend to take more abrasively, because that attribute actually has some really positive sides that society probably hasn't highlighted enough. And that's where it's like really, truly knowing yourself, you can lean into that and know, like I said, always know where you fall on the spectrum. So if you truly understand yourself, you can know where others fall and help them.
Yeah. And I think the key is to surround yourself with people that will identify the positive of your negative and know to point it out to you, and almost really just understand you without you asking them to understand you.
Yeah.
Because that's how people really get seen, is we will often say something and feel another thing because we want to be part of the group. But actually what you need is someone that goes, look, I know you're still going to do this, but I'm going to say no because I know in the long run that's what suits you. So for example, your example is that person that gives ends up becoming stressed and doesn't give their best to their family, and then comes in and more stressed, then eats more, and then starts putting away. Then they don't enjoy how they're coming across, or they won't necessarily, they'll become isolated and they won't do the things that they know serve them because they're so busy serving others. Yes. And so that's where it is like, surround yourself with someone that recognizes that pattern and then goes, I see that you're in this, I'm making a plan, and we will get you out of this. And I think that's more important than still doing it and not having the people that recognize, because that just is when you get into that dark
spiral.
hole. And I think that, so surround yourself with the right people.
So you asked about 10 minutes ago, what did I think the purpose of the episode was? And that's kind of where my mind went when we were discussing in the first 15 minutes. My mind went, well, that for me is a big takeaway. And I just wanted to really highlight it because if you maybe hadn't come to that same conclusion, I think it's quite a useful takeaway.
Yeah, and we could talk for hours on this, but I think I've enjoyed the way that this has led into that ending point. I think it's good. It'd be good to end on that because awesome. We've spoken about teams, we've spoken about understanding, and context is a word that came up a lot. Understanding context. So you're not right or wrong. You're just, how right are you in that context, or how wrong are you in that context? And if we can see things that way, we get them better. So yeah, thanks very much for listening.
Thanks,
if
guys.
you liked the episode, do something about it.
No, we would like
sharing
any follows,
it to others. Yeah,
sharing follows would be massively
comment,
appreciated.
Interact, like we do check the interactions on. I didn't even know you could do that. And yeah, we're enjoying growing, being part of the journey, starting to do a few more edits and just seeing how it goes. So
yeah, hopefully you enjoyed our intro. That is our oldest son beatboxing. So
yeah, and we're going to layer that up. But I really want you guys to be part of the journey. So thanks very much again for being here, giving us your time. And if you have any specific topics that you actually want us to talk about, put that in the comments, because we want to know that what we're talking about is landing, because that's the whole point of this, is adding value. Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Oh, we nearly didn't sign off. Ubuntu. Right? So I'll work on me for you if you work on you for me. The better you are, the better I can be. The better I can be, the better you can be. All right. Have a great week.
Cheers.